Hi, in this video we're going to look at some work problems. Problems involving how much time it takes to do a job when you've got two people working together. And the key fact behind these problems is that if you know how long it takes to do some whole job, say a certain number of hours, then with each hour that goes by, the amount of work you do is that fraction of the whole thing. So for example, say there's something that takes 3 hours to do. Maybe 3 hours to paint a wall or mow a field or something like that. So if you can do the whole thing in 3 hours, then that means that with each hour that you work, you get 1/3 of the job done. You paint a third of the wall in the first hour, you paint another third of the wall in the second hour, and you paint the last third of the wall in hour number 3. So the amount of work that gets done in 1 hour is 1/3 of the job. Now imagine you had 3 people working together on this. One of them's painting this part of the wall, one of them's painting this part, one of them's painting this part, and they're all working at the same time. And if it would take any one of them 3 hours to do the whole thing by himself, then each one gets 1/3 of the job done in 1 hour. So if you got 3 people working together, you can get the whole thing finished in just 1 hour. That's if they all work at the same speed. But what if some of them work faster than others? That's when it gets a little complicated, a little interesting, and that's what we're going to be looking at here. So let's look at an example. Larry can trim the hedges around his property in 3 hours by using an electric hedge trimmer. Gary can do the same job in 7 hours by using a manual trimmer. How long would it take them to trim the hedges working together? So let's see what we got here. The time for Larry, if he did the whole thing himself, would be 3 hours. The time for Gary, if he did the whole thing himself, would be 7 hours. And if they work together, the time it would take them is, well, that's what we're trying to find. We don't know what that is, but if we did know, that would be the answer to the problem. So we'll call that X number of hours. And in case you're thinking, well, can we just add together 3 plus 7? No. If they're working together, they ought to be able to get the job done faster than if you just had one or the other doing the whole thing himself. So it shouldn't take longer. It shouldn't take 10 hours for both of them together. It should actually take shorter time. So let's figure this out. We said if it takes Larry 3 hours to do the whole thing, then how much work does he do in each hour? 1/3 of the job. So the amount done by Larry in 1 hour is 1/3 of the job. He gets 1/3 of the hedges trimmed for each hour that he works. The amount done by Gary in 1 hour would be 1/7. And the amount done by both in 1 hour would be, notice the pattern here? It would be 1/x. However many hours it takes them to do the whole thing, they have 1 over that as the fraction of the job they do in 1 hour. Now this is what we can add together. We can add together the amount of work that one person does plus the amount of work that the other person does equals the amount of work that they both get done working together in any given hour. So 1/3 plus 1/7 equals 1/x. The amount done by Larry plus the amount done by Gary equals the amount done by both of them. So that's the equation we have to solve. How would you solve this? There's more than just one fraction equals another fraction. There's 3 fractions in all. Look at their denominators. There's a 3, there's a 7, there's an x. I want to multiply by something that will enable me to cancel all three of those denominators. What's the lowest common denominator of all of them? It has to be divisible by 3, it has to be divisible by 7, and it has to be divisible by x. So what's divisible by 3 and by 7 and by x? How about if we just multiply them all together and take 21x? So I'm going to multiply both sides of the equation by 21x. 21x times 1/3 plus 1/7 equals 21x times 1 over x. Then if you multiply through, we're taking 21x times 1/3 plus 21x times 1/7 equals 21x times 1 over x. And the fractions are going to cancel because the 21 divided by the 3 here is 7. The 21 divided by the 7 is 3. And the x divided by the x, that cancels out. So 21x over 3 gives me 7x. The 21x over 7 gives me 3x. And the 21x over x gives me 21. Now we have this equation without any more fractions in it. We just got to solve 7x plus 3x equals 21. These are both x terms, so we can combine them. 10x equals 21. Then divide both sides by 10, and we get x equals 21 divided by 10, or 2.1. So x stood for the thing we were trying to find, the amount of time it would take them both working together, and now we know what that is. It's 2.1 hours. So if they work together, they can get the whole thing done in 2.1 hours, just a little over 2 hours. Let's try another one of these. One construction crew can pave a road in 20 hours, and a second crew can do the same job in 15 hours. How long would it take for the two crews to do the job working together? I'm going to let x stand for that thing I'm trying to find, how long it would take for them to do the job together. And then in 1 hour, the amount of the job done by one crew plus the amount done by the other crew equals the amount done by both. 1 over 20 plus 1 over 15 equals 1 over x. That's the equation we have to solve to find what number x is, which will be the answer to the problem. Okay, so to kill off these fractions, I need to multiply both sides by something that is, it's got to be divisible by 20 and by 15 and by x. And the lowest common denominator turns out to be 60x. You can just think of numbers that are divisible by 20. There's 20, there's 40, there's 60, there's 80. Think of numbers that are divisible by 15. There's 15, there's 30, there's 45, there's 60. Aha! 60 is on both lists. Or you could think 20 is made up of 5 times 4. 15 is made up of 5 times 3. X is just made up of x, but if we want all those factors included, we need a 5, we need a 4, we need a 3, and we need an x. 5 times 4 is 20, times 3 is 60, times x is 60x. Anyway, that is what I'm going to multiply by on both sides of the equation. So everything gets multiplied by 60x. And what does that simplify to? When I take 60x times 1 over 20, the 60 divided by 20 is just 3, and we have 3x. When I take 60x times 1 over 15, the 60 divided by 15 is 4, times the x times the 1, that's 4x. And over here, when I take 60x times 1 over x, the x divided by x is just 1, and then 60 times 1 is 60. So now we have 3x plus 4x equals 60. Combine the x terms, and that's 7x equals 60. Divide both sides by 7. We get x equals 60 divided by 7, which is around 8.57, or if you round it to one place, it's about 8.6 to the nearest tenth. So that's the answer. It would take them about 8.6 hours working together.